Hello friends, and welcome back for part number, hold on, let me scroll up, 42 of our walkthrough of Oxygen Not Included Spaced Out DLC. We're getting pretty far along here, and our focus for right now is going to be landing on our 5th asteroid, which is going to be the Ice Asteroid, which also has the place that you will need to work with in order to breach the Temporal Tear. In Spaced Out, the Temporal Tear both needs to be found, and it needs to be opened. So let me change the location of my exploration rocket while I look around for this, by the way. Actually, how many tiles do I have left? That might be cutting it kind of close. We might be okay. All right, anyway, so if you find the Temporal Tear, which is one of the objectives in this, you will need to open it, and that's what's going to be done on the Ice Asteroid. So there's going to be a lot of infrastructure that we need. Sorry, I'm looking for the printing pod here. So yeah, open the Temporal Tear and breach the Temporal Tear are both of the objectives that we need to satisfy here. Establish quote-unquote several colonies will be done once we land on the Ice Asteroids. You don't technically need to land on any of the other ones. However, we will need more terrestrial artifacts. So I guess if you were only doing this part, you would have done everything, but we're going to do everything on here. So yeah, anyway. Let's talk about the rocket that's going to get us there. Our crew for this one, we are going to be taking along Ada and I think Beta as well, who are just kind of separate or conjoined at the hip here, as well as Meep and Camille. So another 4-person mission. So we're going to get them assigned. Actually, I should have just done that while I was in that screen, but I didn't. And let's just make it really awkward now instead of having it be nice and smooth. There we go. And on the interior of this rocket, we can send this to where it's supposed to go first, and we'll kind of talk about the interior while they're there. Let's change our destination really quickly over to the ice planet. And once again, you can use a different kind of engine if you want to get there a little bit faster. I just prefer the steam because it's so easy to get and doesn't produce a ton of heat. It's not very difficult to work with, so I don't know. I'm okay with this, but if you want to use a different rocket type, you also can. The other advantage of something like this is that if you are landing on another planet, you don't need nearly as much vertical space in order to land it somewhere, which can be an annoyance with some of the bigger rocket types. Let's acknowledge our warnings and get out of here. So as soon as all the duplicants get here, we will take off, but let's take a look at the interior in the meantime. So the interior that we have here is a little bit different than before. We do have a Great Hall still, or rather, this is a mess hall. Actually, let me make sure we don't launch this until we fix that, which is a good... This is why we check all of our stuff before we actually left off. So we need to add a decoration in here to make this a Great Hall, which we don't really have ground space for. So we're just going to need to throw a furniture item up here, and we'll launch this in just a bit. So let's get this arrow pod. There we go. So once we get a seed and everything in here, this will be good to go. But basically, this is going to be a Great Hall up here, and this is going to be a washroom, which is just a little bit of extra morale that we can get while we're out there with the space that we have available. If you don't want to do this, you could add some beds or something like that, but you can't actually sleep 4 duplicants in this very well. So I don't know. This seems fine with me. Let's check all of our other resources to make sure that they're good before we take off. Scroll. There we go. We need to also make sure that we have algae because we need to be able to breathe while we're there. It's usually a good thing to have. And food. So berry sludge should be all that we have. And again, it's showing 0, but that's just because when we're grounded and we have this interior building restriction set, it doesn't actually show up as an available food. But we know our fridge is full of it. So yeah, there we go. The fridge is full of it, man. All right. So let's get him out of here. And all we're going to be doing is flying over to the Ice Asteroid. I just like the rockets taking off during the videos, so I'll keep this video running until that happens, but there's going to be a break in this video because we have to fly there. It's going to take them a little while to get there, but once we get there and we land, we do everything that we need to do, we'll be good to go. Come on. There we go. Alright, got this labeled as the ice rocket. Let's get all the duplicants out of their suits really quickly because they don't need to be wasting the oxygen that's in there. Man, Meep is thrilled about this. There we go. Okay, cool. So they're going to be on their way. We should get a small boost from the rocket control, whatever that thing is called. I never remember the name of any building because it's always overnamed in this. This thing, Mission Control Station. We should get a little bit of a boost from that as soon as Harold can get up here and help us out. set this door to open, by the way, so that I don't waste the microsecond that it takes going back and forth from here. Alright, anyway, we're flying to the ice asteroid. We're going to be there in just a little bit. Once we get our boost, it'll probably cut off about 1.5 cycles from this, so I'll come back around then, and we'll start landing on this thing and get it established. Okay, we've got ourselves a rocket in orbit, which means that it's time to start landing on this thing. So, like I mentioned in the very first part of this video, or the very first part of this walkthrough, this is going to be a little bit different surface than you might have on your ice planet. This one has a subsurface ocean, which means that the top biome is going to be have abyssalite on top of it, which means our bot isn't really going to be all that helpful for at least breaching this for the time being. And there's going to be a lot of salt water on here that's already at a reasonable temperature. So let's get our bot down here and at least get started, but your asteroid for the ice one might not look like this. So I will do my best to make this as generic as possible, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we get going. So same routine as usual. We're going to spray our resources down first, so deploy our orbital cargo, then deploy our rover's module. And once that all lands, just going to have the rover unpack some payloads here really quickly, and then we can land our rocket. This is going to be a little bit of a weird one because we still have a little bit of fuel. I'm going to land it in one spot but leave the engine on, and then I will move it down a little bit afterwards once we're closer to the actual biome that we're going to settle in. What I'm going to do with all this salt water is I'm going to pretend like it's not here, and that's not advice. That's just so that I can keep this generic for everybody that is watching this. If you are on this asteroid, I would heavily recommend that you make use of this salt water just as your initial water source for the time being. We will still need to melt some ice and get some water going that way eventually. But for this first time around, I'm going to ignore this just to keep us in line with other people's asteroids that do not have this subsurface ocean if they are playing on a different seed. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a weird part of the walkthrough where it's once again, like, we ran into a couple of polluted water vents on some other asteroids that I just didn't take. But I have repeatedly advised that you should be taking these. Like, this is a polluted water vent that you should definitely be taking, but I'm just not, to make sure that it's consistent with everybody else's playthroughs, and they don't have to necessarily be on the same seed. Alright, I think I've beat this to death, so let me get our rocket down here really quickly. So like we typically do, we need to get a duplicant that's going to be going down on the surface, and we need to find someone that can go into a suit that has a good amount of oxygen in it, so, and a decent amount of durability. Let's see. How about Camille? You look very excited to go down, so it's your time. Alright, so we're going to force Camille into a suit that has oxygen. Back to the star map. Going to select Camille as the person we're going in the Trailblazer module, and just have her land somewhere nearby. Once again, you can make both of these two modules out of steel, and it will be enough to create the rocket landing platform here. So I'm just going to repeat that because I thought it was a good idea. I'm still not doing it only because if you forget that, then you're just kind of stuck. So that's, I mean, that would be something that I would do only because those are the types of mistakes that I would make. We also need to check to make sure we have enough space to land our rocket, and we should have plenty. I think ours is in the 20s, so with the fact that we have over 30 is good. So I'm just going to land it, I guess, somewhere right here. We will take off and re-land it in another place later, only because this is not very ideal to be this high up. I'd rather be closer to where we're actually going to settle, and I still want to pretend like this is not here. I want to pretend like this is all ice, which it would be on a normal one. So this is going to be a little bit of a weirder run through here. Just get the rest of this all set up. We also don't have enough for ladders right now, so this is going to be a little bit of a weird way of getting our duplicants out of here because I don't want to get rid of the engine that has our fuel in it still. So we're going to do that really quickly. Now that we have the platform, let's land our rocket. Whoa, don't push that. Alright, they should be coming down here in just a second, and we'll wait for the steam to dissipate, and then we just need to build a ladder. But because we're on this awkward surface, we could spec Camille to start getting some supplies from in here, but we also have a bunch of supplies in the rocket that we can use for the time being. So once this dissipates, we can just make a ladder that will come down here. Then I'll probably skip ahead a lot. I'm going to skip ahead to a point where I drain all this water so that we're not actually using it. Then I will reposition the rocket and we'll just pretend like we just got there for the first time. So I'll kind of do like a cut of just pretending that we had never landed. And then we will basically re-land in a spot that would make more sense on a real ice asteroid that doesn't have the subsurface ocean. So I'll just be busy doing that for a little bit. It won't be too exciting. The other thing that I was going to mention is now that we're here, we know we're going to need some extra power sources because the power on the ice planet is pretty bad. So what I want to do is start sending the hydrogen through the interplanetary launcher. I have it all hooked up. It looks like it's still waiting for some gas pipes here, but I have it hooked up to our hydrogen supply, which is comically large. And we've been kind of preparing for this for a while. So I just have it hooked up through here. Any excess hydrogen that I get, we're just going to send it over to this asteroid. So I'm just going to target this one. And we will start collecting hydrogen to be our main power source on this asteroid. This is not required, but I think it's really worthwhile only because if we're going to breach the temporal tear in any reasonable amount of time, this is a way to kind of speed that up. So yeah, we're going to do that. Who's trapped? Why are you trapped? I don't understand what you're complaining about. We also need to make sure that they can still use the rest of these buildings. Alright, well, I'll figure this out. I'll get all this stuff pumped out. I'll re-land the rocket somewhere a little bit closer, and then we'll just pretend like this subsurface ocean was never here. But yeah, I'm just going to say it one more time. If you have this subsurface ocean, you're playing on the same seed, use it, but I'm not going to. Okay, I'll be back. Okay. Kind of midway through getting all this salt water and stuff out of the way and hollowing this out. Did want to mention that if you actually were landing on the ice planet here, this would all be ice, and you'd want to hollow out an area just with these ladders, just like I'm doing here. Make a big block, maybe something like this large, because that's going to be where we build our base, and the easiest way to make sure that it's not too cold to live in there is to get all the material to fall out of the bottom by just digging all the way down and just using ladders so all the material falls down. Just gonna have to use our imaginations here just a little bit with this asteroid because it doesn't really behave the same way as the other ones if we have this other trait on it. So yeah, just pretend this is all ice, keep mining this out. Instead of relying on suits for my duplicants, the first thing I did was just create a quick water lock, drop an oxygen diffuser in there so you can at least have your duplicants breathing so they have a kind of safe space. It's a little bit closer to everything else without all the power demands that suits would need. So yeah, kind of typical moving in process, but this one's a little bit different because everything is so cold you will want to have everything moved out of the way. So I'm just going to kind of hollow this whole area out, get all the water destroyed. The way I'm going to be destroying the water is not a thing I've talked about before. And I normally would not do this because it feels like cheating a little bit, but whatever. What we're going to do is we're going to have a bunch of mechanized airlocks down here, maybe like 7 or 8, or sorry, like 8 or 10 of them or something like that, just all in this area. And then I'm going to hook them up to a signal switch. And when that signal switch is open, all the water is going to flow into this area. And then when I close it, if you close everything at once, it'll delete everything that's in the doors. Again, kind of a cheaty way to do it, but considering all I'm doing is just deleting water that I'm not using for the sake of the walkthrough, I don't feel too bad about it, but it's a thing you can do, so I'm just gonna use that exploit for right now to speed up this process rather than powering some pumps for however many cycles that's gonna take. So yeah, just kind of going about it here. Little progress update. I'll start when this at least comes up, since I've never shown this before. I'll start getting the water deleted really quickly, and then that should get all the water out of here so we can just dig it out, pretend like it was all ice, and then actually build our base here. So that'll be the plan. By the way, one thing that I forgot is this planet has a lot of passive radiation on it, to the point that like if you're working out in this area for long periods of time, your duplicants are going to start getting some radiation sickness going on. So the strategy that I have here of leaving a layer of something on top of it is intentional. There's a few asteroids that have way worse radiation than others, so like this one's 250. The main base is only 59, so it's way lower than everywhere else. This one we don't really go on the surface. It's pretty decent. The metal asteroid also pretty low by comparison. The water asteroid I think is kind of high. Yeah, not as high as the ice planet, but still pretty high. But yeah, that's definitely something that I haven't really mentioned that much, is be aware of the type of radiation exposure your duplicates are going to have to deal with, and make sure that you have a good way to answer that. So if they're just all kind of hiding underneath this ceiling for a little bit, we can build everything out, build our lead tiles, and kind of slowly advance our way over, instead of doing everything on the surface first. So just wanted to mention that. Alright, ready to delete some water? Let's do this. So setup here is just a whole bunch of mechanized airlocks stacked on top of each other and linked up to a signal switch. It's pretty simple. You just wait for the water to drain in there, and this is like the lowest point that I can get. I'll get all the other salt water to kind of flow over here. There still will be a little bit left, or I could build tiles to like bump it up. But I'll get it all to flow over here, flow down into this pit, and then as soon as I close the door, what tries to happen with these airlocks is it tries to push the material out of the way. But if there's nothing to the left or the right that this can go into, it will just be destroyed because there's nowhere else for it to go. So it'll try to bump it in all directions, and if it can't, it'll just be like, well, I can't find a safe place for this to go that makes sense. So I'm just going to delete it. So it'll delete all the water, then we can just open it back up, let it flow back in. Apparently the poke shell is fine, it doesn't care about that at all. And we just kind of repeat this process over and over to delete all the water, which is a lot faster than pumping it all out. So little bit of an exploit here, but we're not really using it for anything like to gain a tremendous advantage or break the game or anything. I'm really just doing it for the convenience of a walkthrough. So I don't know, if you want to be into the dark arts, you can do something like this, but I'm just using it to speed this up. So I'm just going to be deleting all this and continuing... Man, my frame rate's getting really bad. And continuing to get more water down here, getting rid of that, and then just hollowing out a space that we need for our base here. By the way, this is the temporal tear opener. We haven't talked about it yet because this is the first time we've seen it, but this is something that we need to use rad bolts to open up. We'll create a rad bolt setup to open this up a little bit later, but for right now, just assume that it's going to be on the outside of whatever your base is. So I will draw a line with lead tiles that kind of goes up like that, and then the base will kind of come over like this and meet up. So I will wall this off entirely. I just have a bunch of lead walls here to prevent some radiation, and there's also some lead walls that start here, just from this like little placeable template, I guess. So there will still be some lead already here, but yeah, that's the idea. Don't want to wall my duplicates out here, but yeah, just gonna keep digging stuff down, and as soon as I get down to the bottom where it would effectively be the size of what our base would be, I'll kind of lower the down into the ice a little bit. We'll pretend like all the material that we dug out, which would normally be ice and snow and that kind of stuff, is here. I'll drop it out the bottom, we'll seal it off, and we'll get this base kind of all tightened up here. So yeah, be back in just a second. Okay, duplicates are done getting all this stuff hollowed out. Just pretend that all of this was ice and stuff like that, and we'll just act like we're moving in here for the first time. I was going to move this down and re-land it, but it's not really that far away. I don't care that much, so I'm just going to deconstruct it where it is when we get there. But the only thing that we still have left that's kind of like a bonus that we got from the saltwater area that I'm just going to get rid of just to demonstrate how you would do it without all the salt water is this. So just need to deconstruct that really quickly, and then I will refill it with regular water. I'm just going to be walling this off really quickly, just so that there's no loss, like no massive loss of oxygen. There's going to be some, but I'm going to get this walled off, and then like we'll typically do with these liquid locks, we just need to go back into our rocket. We need to disconnect any lines that are going to be sending out any polluted water, which we have a lot right now, actually. Which is a little unfortunate, because I kind of want this. But I guess we could just pour some of that out until it starts becoming regular water. So let's just do this for the time being. I think they can reach all that stuff. Yeah. And The other things that really need to be done by this point is make sure all your lead shielding is up so that the radiation isn't too big of a deal when your duplicants are in there. Occasionally your duplicants will start getting some minor radiation sickness. Just try to stop giving them jobs that are taking place out in places that they can be exposed if it starts getting to that point. Looks like we're all drained, by the way, so I'm going to deconstruct that vent. And we're going to switch this so that the output is no longer the polluted water, which will render our sink unusable, but that's fine. And then the rest of this, we're just going to have it flow straight out into our little pit area so that we can fill it up with regular water, which is what would be going on in a normal run. So there we go. So we'll just hook this up really quickly. The only other thing that needs to be done in the meantime is I need walls to like declare what the edges of my base are before we start digging further down. You'll notice I do have exposed ice here, and if this were on a not saltwater based planet, this whole area would probably be like negative 20 or 30 C, something like that. All we should really need to do is wall this off with insulated tile, and then it will kind of warm itself up as your duplicants are in there for a while and as you build more things. So as long as all the material is out, which is why I was saying to build it all out of ladders first, if all the material falls out of the space that you're going to go, then this will actually be pretty easy to heat up and get to at a normal temperature. The ice planet's also a little bit weird too, because you have an issue of you will still need to go down and do stuff in the ice biome, but you're like the middle of it in terms of transportation lines. So like, for example, I need access out into space, but I also need access down here. So this needs to be its own like locked off area for oxygen. This needs to be its own locked off area for oxygen that's at a different temperature. And then this is just your regular space biome. So a little bit weird. By the way, we can also optimize this a little bit. People have been talking about making this a little bit more efficient liquid lock. So let's just go ahead and do that really quickly. What you can do that'll make this still work is you can add tiles at those two places. Then it will require less water. So I did want to talk about this because a lot of people have been mentioning it. I don't typically do it because I like to have the extra space. But in this case, it makes a lot more sense because I'm trying to save as much water as I can. Only because we need like a seed to start water with, basically. Which is why I wanted that polluted water in the first place. So just going to be filling up this liquid lock here really quickly. Let me turn up our speed. So now that that's all turned up, we're going to get this filled, and it should just be one tile and just a little bit more before we can open this back up. In the meantime, all we need to be doing is creating igneous rock walls right here. And since we're going to need 2 liquid locks, I don't want to spend all of my water on the second lock yet. I'm just going to put a manual airlock here, and then a second one right here. Whoops. Oh, the wrong thing selected. And then a second one right here where we can just make a wall. And that will kind of seal off our 3 different areas for the time being. This area is going to be used for melting water and stuff like that for the time being. But it doesn't need to be in our main base area right now. This is basically done, so I can deconstruct this and open it back up so we can get duplicants moving back around. And if you just have a little like T-shaped block like this, it still does work. I will typically not build it this way. Only because it's much more susceptible to freezing and boiling when it's in lesser quantities. And there's also some times where, say, like on this planet, I like to have these little containers here to be able to send stuff back and forth. I set this up a little while ago and didn't show it, but basically when I'm storing oxalite, I want more oxalite in here than this weight plate can possibly take to tell it to turn off. So now, if I just put all this stuff back into that bin, I can really store more here than would normally be allowed. So stuff like this can be really handy. So I typically like these shaped water locks, but the other ones are totally fine too. So there we go. Got our little new locks going on here, and like we would typically need to do in order to move into a base. And I can do this off camera because we've already done this a couple times, but basically just start adding a suit bank here, start adding all the rooms your duplicants would need to live in, and we will work on melting water and that kind of stuff in the next video. So for this one, I'd say we're sufficiently moved in, or rather very close to, and you've kind of seen that process before if you've watched the other parts, so no reason to go over this too many times. And because of this smaller liquid lock, we should have more water in here than normal, meaning that we can start up our water generation on this planet, because there is no real water flow. But we'll take care of that and a whole bunch of more things on this asteroid in the next video. So I'll be back soon with that. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.